All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. This is the third in the series of webinars hosted by Michigan State University, um, focused on contemporary issues facing the dairy industry. My name is George Smith. I have the pleasure of serving as the director of Michigan State University Ag Bioresearch and Senior Associate Dean for the College for Research for the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I'm going to provide a few very brief introductory comments and then introduce our two panelists today. We are on a sort of very exciting journey into the future, given the investment the state of Michigan has made in new dairy facilities at Michigan State University, a transformational investment that is allowing our faculty, staff, and students to work in partnership with stakeholders in the state of Michigan and beyond to develop a vision for the future and implement research, teaching, and outreach programs to position not only the Michigan dairy industry, but dairy industry in this country and beyond for success. So we're really excited about that. That journey has just started. So we're in the process of trying to build programmatic support and input about the future direction and hopefully attract partners that want to join that vision in the future and be part of it. Hence the reason for the three webinars we've had. The first two webinars, which were held earlier this spring, the initial one focused on circular agricultural economies, the dairy industry, and rural development. The second one focused on transforming dairy waste into valuable resources, innovative solutions for a sustainable future. And the third one also touches on a really critical topic for the future of the dairy industry in this country and beyond. That's workforce. So the title of the webinar today is Workforce Development in the Circular Dairy Economy. I have the pleasure of introducing our two speakers, and then I will turn the program over to them. We are very pleased to have Dr. Gordie Jones here with us. Gordie is a DBM and recognized as an independent dairy performance consultant and a partner at Central Sands Dairy. He has consulted with dairy producers and veterinarians across the U.S. and globally regarding herd performance, nutrition, dairy cow environment and housing, expansion, dairy management, personal standard operating procedures, and cow comfort. Dr. Jones received his BS in Dairy Science and DVM from Michigan State University. Our second panelist today is Dr. Annette O'Connor. Annette is a veterinarian and quantitative epidemiologist, renowned for her contributions to veterinary epidemiology, research synthesis, food safety, and evidence-based research practices. She currently serves as a chairperson of the Department of Large Animal Clinical Sciences and interim associate dean of student engagement and success at Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicines. So with that, welcome Dr. Jones and Dr. Annette O'Connor, and I will turn the program over to you.
Thanks very much, George, for that introduction. I'm really thrilled that Dr. Jones is here with us today. And so we're going to have two presentations. We certainly invite questions. And so you can put your Q&A in there. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Dr. Jones. So let me begin by sharing my screen. Whoops, a daisy. You'd think I'd know how to do this. Hang on. Is that working? Here we go. There we go. So as George's introduction said, we're here talking about workforce development. And I think it's really critical that we start with what is our strategic goal? Why are we doing this? And it's really because Michigan State University, we will be the recognized leader in answering society's questions on dairy systems. That's something that as an institution we are devoted to. And it's really that broad perspective that George was talking about, that we're really interested in, not just about how to make milk, right? But we're interested in the entire dairy, agricultural, rural ecosystem. And we see Michigan State as the higher education institution that's going to deliver on that. We have that expertise to answer the research questions, etc., but also to provide the workforce and the training that is going to be able to meet those needs. Our goal really is to support dairy farmers as they become the hub of development in a circular rural economy. And, this is not a fly-by-night idea. We've been working on this for a long time. And this is a conversation that if you haven't been in it before, you're welcome now, right? So this is a long conversation about how do we think more broadly about the dairy industry. And as an example, we had a meeting back in October 2023 where we talked about these ideas. Again, thinking, let's think about how do we make the dairy industry the hub of rural development and sustainable from an economic perspective, recognizing that also includes an environmental and a social perspective. And, relevant to today, we also talked about what are those pipelines for talent. And we know there are a lot of a lot of workforce needs in the dairy industry. But today we're mainly focusing on the workforce development that's associated with an institution like MSU. And then we've moved along, we've had these seminars which have already been discussed by George with Barry Bradford and Jose Simas talking about this concept. And really, again, I want to make sure that we're thinking about, because from a workforce development, we're not just talking about how do we make more milk, right? We're talking about all of the other things that go into the rural economy, both the inputs and the outputs. And we had a really excellent example of that from Wei Lau and Holly Bowers in their presentation, which gave an excellent example of how we could transform what is currently considered a waste, which is manure, into an incredibly useful resource, water, fertilizer, and energy. And those two focus particularly on research findings and development. But what I want to focus on today is the other critical part of our land grant mission, and that is workforce development. And where does higher education fit in the idea of workforce development for the circular economy? It's part of our mission to provide outstanding undergraduate, graduate, and professional education. And so what we want to have a conversation about, and I'm just springboarding that conversation, is what do our industry partners need from us, and how can we partner with you to make sure you get the workforce you need? And I'm going to go back to a really old example that means a lot to me as a veterinarian. And it's this blog that I read a fair time ago about the day the horse lost its job. And, as the chair of large animal clinical sciences, this is a sad blog for me. But what this article was about was it was about the impact of technology on society and workforce development. And particularly this article was talking about the automobile and how critical it was, of course. And this was in 1922 when the New York Fire Department decided that they would use an automobile for a fire truck instead of using horses, right? And if you think about, I thought about that from the perspective of a land grant institution that was serving society and a profession that was serving society. And I imagined what it must have been like when people saw this massive shift happening and how responsive was higher education to the shifts to enable it to provide what society needed going forward, right? So as we moved away from the horse and we moved towards the auto industry, society needed higher education to provide not just people who made cars, right? It needed people who made roads, people who understood supply chain management, people who could build garages, all sorts of things, the things around that industry. And that's our idea of the rural circular economy. How do we as an institution meet those needs? And, I'm certainly someone who thinks that there are great things coming for agriculture. If we think about what happened with the automobile industry, between 1910 and 1950, the automobile industry made, in its broad scope as defined, right, not just people making cars, the automobile industry, just like ag, made 7.5 million jobs and lost about 600,000 jobs. And by the end of that period, it was 10% of this country's workforce. And I'm going to say that I believe that higher education and MSU met those needs for society, right? Those training needs. We also met the research needs as well, but we train a lot fewer farriers than we did originally, and we train a lot more automotive engineers because as an institution and as an enterprise higher education, we're really only here for you, right? And as we talk about this partnership and the really exciting things that we want to do, or well, that actually that the industry wants to do, we see the ability to provide those people to you as just basically our mission. It's essential to what we do. And I just imagine that there were a group of faculty who sat in a room one day and decided, how should we reinvigorate our animal science curriculum? How should we reinvigorate our veterinary science curriculum? And those things and who we're providing to the workforce. And they did it. We're here, we're successful, we're still relevant. And I'm always enthused by the opportunities that the university can offer from a workforce development perspective. So I want to really touch on just 3 aspects, and I only have 20 minutes and I could probably talk for a lot longer than 20 minutes about workforce development and our role in it. I want to just touch on 3 aspects that I hope will lead to a springboarding of discussions of partnerships and how we need to partner with the industry to, make sure we're meeting the needs as we did before. One is the dairying and animal care, right, which I think is foundational to obviously workforce development. That's a core for us. But just like you can't have, and I want to back up, because, we really need that essential component. It's like you can't have a car industry without a car. You need some people to make cars, and you need some people to dairy, and you need some people to care for animals. It's essential. But there are also those allied industries that support the dairy and animal industries, right? Luckily they've been framed for us as both the inputs and the outputs now from the prior talks. And then I also want to take a little bit of time to talk about non-agricultural related skills that I think that we're probably not leveraging enough for the university, and I see huge opportunity for us to partner with the industry. So let's talk about dairying and animal care skills. I hope that we agree that MSU is doing a great job of providing the kind of workers that are able to understand the industry and work with the industry. I have to give credit for this slide to Joe Domek, who has done with the others in the animal science department and all over the College of Ag and Natural Resources and Vet Science to provide this very dairy specific workforce. And there are so many examples of this, but one I want to pull out and highlight is this animal science bachelor degree with the dairy concentration, which has really been responsive to the industry's needs, right? And the faculty who've worked on this tried to understand what does the industry need and how do we provide it, have done a stellar job. And it's an example of us being responsive. Over in the veterinary science field, we have similar examples. This program, the Summer Food Systems Fellowship Program, has been going for many, many years. I think it's 24 at this point. And its goal is particularly to make sure that we've got the right people with the right skills, helping to care after animals and in the dairy industry, and giving them more exposure to the concepts that they're going to be exposed to when they're in the industry. And a really critical part of this experience that we try to give to people so that when they go to the industry, they are the people that you need, is this concept of experiential learning. And there are so many examples of this that are absolutely stellar. But I am a little bit biased, and I do want to take this opportunity that I rarely get to the opportunity to sort of toot the horn of these people and say, this is an example of experiential learning that's happening at MSU that is absolutely stellar, and that is the Dairy Challenge. And what we have here is some students who've done this Dairy Challenge and have been phenomenally successful. And although I know it takes a team to be able to do this, Joe Domek and Roger Thompson, who are both animal science faculty, and Roger is veterinarian and also partially in my department, have been essential to this program. And it is producing, we believe, critical people for the industry. And along with that, we have a lot of industry sponsors in those sort of programs, and they help make that experience more real, more realistic, and is enormously important. So we want to grow those programs as well. The other aspect of workforce development that I really think that MSU wants to hear from industry partners is the allied industries that support the dairy and animal care. And I really think I'm just going to give two examples of those. And one's related to the inputs and one's related to the outputs. And the one I'm going to pull on is the discussion, for those of you who may not have been there, there was a discussion by Barry Bradford and Jose Simas about how important byproducts are in the dairy industry. And of course, forage is enormously important for industry. We have to have, just as we have to have cars, we also have to have roads, and we have to have supply chains that deliver gasoline, etc. And just as we have to have cows that milk, we need to have inputs for that. And there's a huge opportunity for MSU to hear what does the industry need in those areas, in addition to animal care. And the reason that this really, really matters is this is much bigger than the livestock support services. So this graph gives you a relative feel for the US employment in agriculture and the support industries. And you can see livestock, but you can see livestock support services. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I imagine it's nutritionists, sales techs, veterinarians, etc. They're fairly small, right? But you can see down here that crop support is enormous, right? And so, we really think of the circular economy. And as I pointed out, moving back to this slide was presented by Jose Simas in the first presentation, talking about the impact of the dairy industry in using byproducts with respect to greenhouse gases, etc. What I want to focus on is how critical it is that we have these forages and that we have these byproducts, and how incredibly complicated it is from a supply chain management perspective to get these products to the dairy, make sure they're utilized, the nutritionists who have to understand that, the supply chain managers. And if we don't have those things, then we're not able to have the sort of vital circular economy, agricultural economy that we want. And so, but as you can imagine, when it comes to supply chain management, there are a lot of places those people can go. And we really need to partner with the industry and hear from them is, how do we make those people think that agriculture and the circular dairy economy is a place that they can have that fulfilling career? So that's sort of on the input side, thinking really broadly that, all of those, everything that goes into an input is really part of the circular economy, and we want to be part of developing that. And then on the other side, this is a slide from Wei Lau's presentation where he talked about how we can get more resources from manure, etc. And if we think about the workforce development that has to go in to make this feasible, it's incredibly exciting. Obviously, we need ag engineers and we need chemists, but even down to the point of having somebody who knows how to manage a plant like this. And if we don't have these, and then things won't function as well. And so it's really important that when we think about workforce development, we just don't think just about dairy and animal care. We've got to think more broadly and hear from the industries that support, that are on the input side and the output side, so that we can make those, so that we can have those people available when they're needed. It would be remiss of me not to mention the importance of technology, the digitalization of data and precision agriculture, be it in the plant sciences, which eventually are going to form part of the dairy circular economy, or if it be in precision livestock. We know that there are going to be enormous changes here, and that we need these skill sets to be infused throughout our our workforce development. And so we may look at this picture here and think, well, that's not really part of the circular dairy economy, but I really think it is when I think about forage development, etc. And I think MSU has had a long history of thinking about how do we provide the workforce for all around that industry. I'm going to give you an example that I'm a little bit biased about and proud of, is this online food safety program, which we have had in our department for 20 years, which is part of that responsiveness of higher education to providing, not just dairying and animal care, but the other aspects of higher education that support that industry. And I think there's a huge number of opportunities that we can continue to do this type of thing. And we just need partnerships with the industry to help us understand. An example here is, as we get more much larger dairies and much more integration in dairies, human resource management becomes much more difficult. And so one of the industries that has done an exceptionally good job of training people for its particular needs is the healthcare industry. And so the question that we have here at MSU that you can perhaps help us answer is, do we need to have more tailored programs outside of dairying and animal care that focus on agriculture? I'll bring you an example of that in a little bit. I also think if we are going to do that, if we're going to talk about supply chain management from an agricultural perspective or human resource management from an agricultural perspective, we really need to sort of potentially rethink our experiential learning. These programs are designed for people who are doing dairying and animal care. But I think at the moment, there are 2.5 million jobs and 2 million job seekers. And so experiential learning experiences can be perhaps refocused, not these ones refocused, but we can create experiential learning that introduces people to the agricultural industry, right? So that people know that, hey, there's a resource management job in the agricultural industry. There is a supply chain management job in the agricultural industry. And then in my last couple of minutes, I want to talk about a last aspect. Of course, there are many on workforce development, and that is non-agricultural related skills, right? And I want to talk about this concept called the Peter Principle, and I'm not sure how many people are familiar with this concept, so I'm going to give you a very rough, and apologies to anyone who's a managerial economist. Everyone that we know probably can expect to have 3 or 4 jobs during their career. And I think it's true for many industries, including the agricultural industry and the dairy industry, that employees are promoted based on their success in previous jobs, right? So we have this idea that past performance is a good indicator of future performance. And there's a really good reason that we do this, right? Often these people have been good at their previous job on the farm or in the plant, and these people know the industry, so we really want to keep them. The problem that we have is that skills in one job don't necessarily translate to another job. So what happens or can happen is that we can promote people to a level where they're no longer competent because their Bachelor of Science or their DVM didn't actually give them that skill. Or, and this is equally as detrimental, we can promote these people and leave them in a role where they're by themselves and their learning is experiential and slow and often informed by mistakes, as I wouldn't do that again at that time. That's not necessarily the most efficient approach to building that career force. And so that's actually known as the Peter Principle, and it's this concept that, people can max out on their skills because even though they were good at their job, that was a different skill set. And I think the university has an enormous role to play in helping solve the Peter Principle, right? Especially with micro-credentialing. People are not going to come back and do a Bachelor of Science in Human Resources. However, the university can play a role in helping industries provide those people with micro-credentialing and introduction to the skill so it's not so slow and they come up to speed a lot faster. There are so many areas that we can do this in. organizational governance, team management, project management, etc. And at the moment, the place where this is absolutely exploding is data analytics. There's a lot of middle management people who feel the need to get some micro credentialing. They're not going to go back and do a BS in Comp Sci, but they do want some micro credentials on understanding data analytics. And I feel like there's a huge role for the university to play here, if as long as we have the guidance from the industry and the partnerships. I've made this example before, that the healthcare industry has recognized that there's a lot more in their industry than healthcare. And so, you know, here we have an example of a graduate certificate in hospital leadership and hospital compliance. And I think we need the industry to sort of tell us, do we need agricultural leadership, agricultural compliance? I'm absolutely sure that higher education has a suite of tools to help the industry, right? We've done it before, we're going to do it again. We have entry-level programs, we have specialist programs that everybody's very familiar with, the BS, the BA, the Masters, the doctoral. We're training the nutritionists, and they're being trained by highly qualified people who are connected to the industry, as we've already shown you. But we can change those programs, and we will, right? We're going to introduce more concepts in those. But there are also other really great opportunities where we can partner more. I think micro-credentialing and graduate certificates are our place, and executive education with no credit programs is another place that we can help with workforce development in this circular economy. And we really have the tools now. You know, like before, we were all about having to give it all up and come back and stay here, but we have borderless education. It's an option now, and we can do it. And we've embraced experiential learning like never before. Well, we can want to embrace different industries with respect to that partnership. As I said, you know, often this is considered to be the center, and it is a really transformative project, this new teaching and research facility. But there's a lot of other workforce development that can be linked to this that isn't necessarily going to touch a cow, and I think that's really, really important. And I want to leave you with this idea that I have great faith in the higher education's approach to an ability to meet the industry's needs and provide the workforce that people need. And because I genuinely believe that higher education is not an ivory tower of people who aren't transformative. I think that my example of the veterinary science industry and how it's changed is one. But the other one that I think is great is I always imagine that there was an information scientist / librarian one day in the library with a meeting of like-minded people who said, you know what? I think we should have a Starbucks in the library. And if you think about how transformative and innovative that was, and what's really great is that enough people in that room said, you know what, you're right. Let's have a Starbucks in the library. And how transformative that was. And it's revitalized libraries, which we thought were going to die. So higher education is able to meet the needs. We just need a partnership to know what people want, because that's our reason for being. So that was my sort of perspective from someone who's embedded in higher education and deeply developed workforce development. But what we really need to hear from is someone like Dr. Jones, who can tell us from his perspective, what are those needs? And I'm really pleased to be able to introduce him. We are thrilled that he's able to attend this. He's also coming to our 7th of May event. And so I'm going to pass over to Dr. Jones now, and we'll hear his perspective, and then we'll take questions and comments.
Okay, it looks like I'm both live and I think I drew the wrong straw. It was like I should have went ahead of Annette. Very nice job, Dr. O'Connor. It was very informative. So now I have to hit my share screen. I have to hit Dairy Workforce, share, and there we go. Let's see where this goes. You are screen sharing, so I'm good. Well, thanks for that introduction, and it's fun to be back on campus, even if I'm virtually on campus. So let's see, there we go. For me, predicting the future is a lot like driving a car blindfolded, following the instructions out of someone looking out the back window. I have been wrong so often in my professional life. I think in the 80s, I said I'd never have a computer on a dairy farm, and suddenly I do that. I also predict, in fact, one of the ironies of my life, if you will, as a Michigan State graduate was I left Michigan in 1977, receiving my DVM, and moved to Wisconsin because I hated free stalls. And they kept cows in little red barns in Wisconsin, so I could jump out of a warm truck into a warm barn and treat a broken cow. And pretty soon I realized my best day as a veterinarian was my dairyman's worst day. So I had to learn something other than, boy, I hope he gets another sick cow. And I had to figure out what was making those cows sick. Anyway, amazingly, I went to Wisconsin to be in a red barn, and today I'm one of the world's experts on freestalls internationally. So there's four major forces shaping agriculture in the U.S. The industrialization and consolidation of production. The dairy industry is in a phase of very rapid structural change. Large dairy production technology is irreversibly changing the industry, and it's dominating it. Globalization of markets. Our dairy products move worldwide, butter, powder, everything. When China brought melamine into their milk powder and into the human market for babies, and young babies in China were dying from liver disease, suddenly the U.S. became a large importer in powder. No beef moves to Australia, Japan from North America. Food safety issues like HPAI, BSE, mad cow, E. coli, OH17, organic markets, fear-based marketing. They've changed the industry. And then the last thing is consumerism. Oops. I've got things in my way that I can't get rid of. There they are. Low fat, low carb, happy cows. All of these forces are changing U.S. agriculture. And we're living in that. And then, as you know, since even in the last 20 years, in 2003, we made a prediction of what would happen by 2020. And now look at 2004 to 2024. The number of dairy farms. In 2004, we had 66,000 dairies across North America, the U.S. We had 9 million dairy cows, and we could produce 18,900 pounds of milk, and the herd size was 135. If I go to 2024, we now have 24,800 dairy herds with 9.3 million dairy cows, and the average production per cow is over 6,000 pounds more, 24,170, and the average herd size is 377. Look at Michigan, 1,100 dairy herds left, 440,000 dairy cows, with a production of 27,600 pounds of milk, 400 cows in the average herd. And congratulations, Michigan, you're the highest state in production per cow of any. My adopted state of Wisconsin sits in 6th place. So great job. That means Michigan State and all the other people are putting the technology out there. As I look at the dairy industry that I work for, there's 4 dairy farms left in America. The Sunset Dairy is a small dairy that will shut down when the current owner retires or leaves for economic, age, or lifestyle reasons. These are terminal dairies, and they have a sunset and an end clause. There are niche dairies in our industry, and this is production for a specific market with maybe a specialized system. Think organic, think grazing, think Amish. These dairies are still successful no matter what their size are because they can fit a niche in the industry, a niche. Lifestyle dairies. These are all over Michigan, and they're operated with considerable off-farm income for personal lifestyle reasons. The owners want to raise their families on dairies, and they bring in outside income. In my veterinary practice, I used to call this the black hole option. They would pour money down a black hole. But the lifestyle dairy wants to do it, and it's still out there. The last dairy in the industry is the large dairy. And a large dairy today, by my definition, has to sell a semi-load of milk in one day. This is the principal sector in terms of current and future milk production in the United States, and it continues to grow. If the average herd size were 1,000 cows, and if the nation's milk needs are being met by 9 million cows, then 9,000 herds will supply all the milk we need. Currently, there's 24,000 herds in the U.S., and 65% of the nation's dairy herd lives on 1,000 cow plus dairies. These are the dairies that need all of that circular technology that Dr. O'Connor's talking about. So if I think about the use of dairy veterinarians by types of industry, think about this. Minnesota is the number 7 dairy state in the U.S. There's 4,500 dairy farms and almost 500,000 dairy cows. AABP membership in Minnesota is 175 members. The AABP, the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, is a dairy club mostly. So that means the average dairy veterinarian in Minnesota takes care of 3,000 to 2,500 dairy cows per AABP member. If we look at the Idaho dairy industry, it's number 4 in the U.S. It has 425 dairy farms with almost 700,000 cows, a 21,000 pound of milk per cow, and it has 83 AABP members. Per AABP member, they take care of 8,000 cows. It's a transformable industry for veterinary medicine. We have to learn how to work on larger dairies. Okay, the future needs for dairy practitioners. Using the current Idaho paradigm for dairy practice with 9.5 million cows and 8,000 cows per AABP member, we only need 1,175 dairy vets. Currently, there's 4,200 AAPP memberships, and they're predominantly dairy vets. So despite the current perceived shortage of food animal practitioners, the real need for dairy practitioners is very likely to decline rapidly and significantly. But the issue is not numbers of practitioners. The issue is what role can they play in the industry and whether or not they're prepared to fill that role. In terms of education, in terms of personality, experience, and lifestyle. So, what roles are there for dairy veterinarians? Currently, dairy veterinarians have been technical service providers. They do pregnancy checks, they dehorn, they do dystocias, surgeries. That's what's taught by most veterinary curriculum. There's limited activity on large dairies. I run a 3,500 cow dairy, and I hire a veterinarian on Fridays for 3 hours of work in 4 pens. So she works on my 3,500 milk cow dairy for 3.5 hours. All right, drug distribution. Major income. It was a major income source for many veterinarians. This is being lost to other distribution channels. And the need for prescription writing remains a physician paradigm. Truly, right now, we do have that physician paradigm that we have to maintain. So we have a role on the dairies with drugs and in keeping inventories and doing that. Management consulting, production medicine. It's proven difficult to sustain a good income and local geography for our vets if this is the only role they do. It often has a significant positive impact on a dairy at first, and it's harder to continue to make large gains on the same dairy over time. Probably there's only 3 reasons I can get to a dairy regularly. Number 1 is reproduction, number 2 is milk quality, and number 3 is nutrition. And veterinarians historically have stayed so far away from nutrition that it's surprising. And then herd managers. There's a limited number of such veterinarians at present. It's a real potential growth area. And I can't see because of the bottom part of this. Let me get that back. Okay. And it's a new role for traditional dairy practitioners. All right. Matching services to dairy types. If I look at sunset, niche, lifestyle, and large dairy, the veterinary profession needs to make a change in this training. Can we move to consulting, a managerial role, and use our skill sets on larger dairies that are going to survive? So what rules are there for dairies on a societal level? Integrated Production System Manager, Health and Productivity Officer. Consider the swine and poultry industry as models. If you think about that, production efficiency, disease control, and farm management oversight. Veterinarians take a large role in poultry and swine doing that. The standardization and certification of production practices and risk management. We can fill that role on dairies. What about work for consortium of dairies or food marketing companies as part of product procurement contracts? Think about this. All of the milk processors are now using veterinarians as quality and milk service control officers. They are helping with milk quality on large dairies for grande cheese, for things like Fairlife milk. These people are doing it. And then food safety and animal welfare auditors. Can we think about, there's a large potential use of dairy veterinarians as food safety and animal welfare officers. It may not require a veterinarian. It's in the issue of the Practice Act and competition will come in. We'll speak more outside veterinary medicine in just a minute. It will require government policy action and public funding, but it will require a significant shift in the relationship between the vet and the dairy operators. All right, regulatory and official policy development. How about some other ideas for dairies? All right, dairy farm needs. If you think about those beyond the stuff that Dr. O'Connor talked about, milkers, herd people, maternity, cow drovers, feeders, manure technicians, digester operators. We need nutritionists on dairy farms. And as dairy farms get larger and larger, the nutritionist is the person the dairy manager, dairy owner turns to for advice. And so we need new nutritionists who can understand byproduct use and can do that. We need agronomists who are really nutrient managers who understand. Look at that graph that Dr. O'Connor said, the pile at the bottom between crops and crop supply people. At my dairy, I have an NMP, a nutrient management plan advisor. So not only do I take care of my nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, but I have somebody who makes sure it goes on the right fields. We use computers, we use satellite technology, and I need those people coming to my dairy. I need HR personnel that help me with SOPs. I need SOP trainers. I need trainers of my people. I give certificates at my dairy. After you've understood your SOP, you are given either an oral exam or a written exam for your job. And when you pass that job, you are now a milker technician, a feeder technician, and you receive a daily increase in pay. So I need trainers. I need MBAs. I need people who understand marketing of milk and marketing of buying my products like corn, soy, futures marketing. I need architects and dairy designers and engineers. I tease the industry that there are two genes in the dairy industry for dairy farmers. The first gene in the dairy industry uses an MBA or a financial manager because that first gene is the don't pay taxes gene. The second gene in a Michigan dairy farmer is the lean-to gene. If they own a building, they'll put another building on top of it. I get into dairy farms where I try and understand cow movement, and it becomes a moron dairy. Not that the dairyman is a moron, but they've added more on more on more, so I can't even figure out how cows move. I need dairy designers and architects who understand not only the movement of fresh air, but the biology and behavior of a bovine. I need bovine behavioralists to help us learn how to handle cows on dairies. I need welfare auditors so that I make the process that my milk has a low cell count and that I am treating animals. The fun thing about cow comfort, if you will, is that every time we make a cow either eat more or sleep more or more comfortable, she does eat more and sleep more, and she gives more milk. So these welfare auditors are a huge thing on my dairy farm. I want you to think one other thing here. As a dairy farm owner, when you bring these other outside people to me, I don't care what they know until I know that they care. So I need passionate people in our industry who understand cows and who have a love of cows. And when they bring me a solution on my dairy, these other people, they have to own the solution, not make me make a choice. They're the experts. They're the experts in entomology. I have to have a bug entomologist to help me control flies. I need an entomology training. I've had 6 hours of entomology training on my dairy to help me kill more flies with a shovel. I need these people on my dairy. Some other ideas in research, Dr. O'Connor did a great job of talking about micro-credentialing. Cornell University has a summer dairy institute. I think Michigan State needs to do something like that. The Herpes Fellowship, the Dr. Herpes Fellowship is now being developed as an independent resource for educating veterinarians. So think about this. Cornell University, I'm sorry as a Spartan to bring up Cornell, but they have a summer dairy institute for young veterinarians. This is a 6-week summer course for veterinarians, the last year of vet school or the first year or two of practice, and they train veterinarians in these extra things. The Herpes Fellowship, the Dr. Charles Herpes Fellowship, offers a Chicago executive MBA, so people will start to understand the finance of a dairy. Here's the website for it. And the Herpes Fellowship has, beyond the MBA, the Herpes Fellowship offers modules in epidemiology and statistics, nutrition, agronomy and manure, reproduction and genetics, facility design and management, milk quality, calves and heifer raising, and then bringing it together in that circular pattern that Dr. O'Connor is talking about in a holistic, sustainable approach to the dairy farm. The dairy workforce, I need all of these people to come to my dairy. I need all of this together. And so there are opportunities. And yeah. And think about food animal veterinary services for society. Society is going to have to pay for food safety, food supply, guaranteeing our food supply. At Fair Oaks Dairy, I'm a partner with the Fair Oaks Dairy owners. We built a visitor center there that hosts more than 500,000 people a year, and yet we're terrified that somebody will get off an airplane an hour away in Chicago and bring us hoof and mouth. So we have to have biosecurity people. Our visitor center had to make sure those people didn't. It took design people, it took everybody else to make sure that we could have biosecurity for our cows. Well, the veterinary expertise is needed for the public good that can't be individually charged to a farm. So society needs to help in these things. So I'm going to leave it at that. And that's my big, broad view of what I can bring to the farm, or what veterinary medicine and what the workforce beyond veterinary medicine does to the dairy. And with that, we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jones, Dr. O'Connor. I would encourage our participants to type your questions into the Q&A. Look forward to the conversation. So I may go ahead and start. Dr. Jones, you talked about this a little bit, structural changes universities might need to consider to deliver more flexible industry-aligned training programs. And I really appreciate your comments and the holistic perspective that both you and Annette presented. But I'm going to ask a slightly different question. Given a smaller and smaller percentage of the population actually grows up and understands agriculture, given the most students that are interested in husbandry type degrees or veterinary medicine type degrees don't come from an agricultural background, one of the keys to meeting the workforce needs of the future is recruiting people to careers where dairy isn't currently in their wheelhouse. What ideas do the two of you have for us in terms of creative ways to get more people interested in the diversity of career options that were illustrated?
I smile because of the question. I grew up in Detroit, not in the suburbs of Detroit, but in the heart of Detroit. And And so I wasn't raised on a dairy farm, and I had to find a way to get onto a dairy farm. So we can recruit city kids. In fact, my first 10 years of practice, I don't think I ever told a dairy farmer with 40 cows that I came from Detroit. He would ask where I'm from. I came from Michigan State, Southeast Michigan, and never wanted to admit that I was a city kid from Detroit. And yet we have to recruit those people. And the cow has an amazing story. I want to back up for a minute. She's truly the foster mother of the human race. And so without cows, we don't have civilization. And the debt we owe her and the bond we've made with this cow is a passion I have, and it's the passion I want to get to young people in agriculture to help them understand she still has a role in our society.
Thanks. Annette, you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I think if we are going to rely on people from agriculture to build our workforce, we're not going to be successful. And I do actually think we do need to know how is it that we convince people who don't even consider agriculture as an industry that they can be involved in, because I don't think we do. I think healthcare has given you an example. There are a lot of people who don't have anyone in healthcare, but the healthcare industry has worked with higher education to design programs like I showed, healthcare compliance, healthcare leadership. You don't have to be a doctor or a nurse to be involved in healthcare. And those people have internships with those industries that they serve. And I do think that there's a real opportunity for us to think about, okay, are we making sure that we have supply chain management in agriculture? The MBA that we saw in agriculture. I think there are real opportunities, and we can look at the healthcare industry as an example, because we just cannot rely on having enough people with experience from ag. And let me just say, I've said this ever since I've been in my current role. In the veterinary profession, people pay for this degree, and every aspect of this degree is open to them. And it's really critical that the dairy industry and the agricultural industry, it has that message that you don't have to have been raised on a farm to be welcome in our community. That is actually a really important message, because people like Gordie Jones are really important, and they needed to hear that to go, okay, I'll go to the dairy industry, right? It must have been welcoming. It must have been a place where people felt they could succeed. So we do have to, work with the industry to get that message out there that this is a great place to be and you are welcome. And there's a plethora of stuff you can do, right? That's another trick. There's a plethora of things you can do with this industry.
Fantastic. Dr. Jones, I know you touched on this when you talked about the partnership of Cornell and the other fellowship program, but along that theme, what makes those partnerships so successful? And as we talk new opportunities for partnerships between the dairy industry and universities to meet those needs for specialized training, what are the really important things to keep in mind? And what are the things that could lead to failure?
Wow. I'm reminded, and I was remiss in not bringing up, I sent my feeders to Herb Buchholz's feeder school at Michigan State. Michigan State offers an amazing program. Herb did in the back in the old days, it seemed like, for dairy feeders. To answer the question, my people need ongoing training and development, and because they do get stale in their jobs. And then suddenly they like their job and they're good at it, and suddenly they don't like their job because they're bored. So refresh training moves them into other jobs. I bring in new milkers and my cow pusher. I explained to Dr. O'Connor, in the early dairy industry, the person who moved cows, the drover, was often thought of as the least job on the dairy. That person is my main recruiter for becoming maternity technician or becoming one of my herdsmen, because that person sees every cow on my dairy every day. And if that person gets training into observational skills, into detecting heat, lameness, sick cows, they become a valuable resource. And I need education, this micro-credentialing, if you will. And then Facebook. We certificate our people, and they hold that certificate up, and they're on Facebook for their family, that they become a milker technician, and they have pride in their jobs. and they understand their job. So I'm best at that, I guess. I think I lost half of the question.
No, that was good. You hit on it. Annette, anything you want to add?
No, I think Gordie summarized it well.
Right.
Yep.
So I've got one other one, Annette, I'll let you go first on this. You've talked about, data, the emergence of data, new tools and technologies to help dairy farmers manage a whole host of aspects of their operations. How might the dairy farm of 45 look different than 2025 from a technology perspective? And how do we provide that next workforce across the whole spectrum of jobs with the training now and in the future to be able to take advantage of those tools?
Wow. That was small. Well, I think you just have to begin, right? So I think you have to start knowing that you don't know where you're going. As Gordie was saying, what we do know is that technology is not cyclical. We are not going back to the rotary phone anytime soon. So we know that technology is going to make an impact. We can't predict it, but we are actually able to do even now. Like all of us, I'm sure, have helped. So we need to have access to those skill sets, let people know what their impact is. We have to help people understand. One of the soft skills I think we really need to include in our teaching is comfort with change, right? That is a soft skill that I think everyone's going to have to get much more comfortable with, and that should be part of our training programs, because it's a bit like in vet science. I can tell you what the drug is today, but what I need you to do is be able to know what the drug is you're going to use in 10 years' time. And that's the foundational science, biochemistry. When it comes to technology, what we're going to need to teach people really fundamentally is to be comfortable with relearning their skill set. And so we can teach them how to use whatever the software is today. But if we don't teach them how to cope with learning a new piece of software next year, that is a fundamental part of the job and we can do it, then I think we'll be failing, because they'll still want to use that software. And I know most people don't think about, I'm not sure that's a normal perspective, but that's my perspective. The skill is how to adopt to change.
I need people that look at phones. I need tech. My people have this phone in their hand all the time, and suddenly when I changed my dairy information to the phone, they gained all kinds of information and they enjoyed the job together. The one warning I have for the industry, because I have a pet peeve in the technology, is I want us to use the data and the technology upstream to prevent a problem. I'm tired of technologies that come to me downstream that try and save drowning cows. Let's go upstream and prevent her from falling in the creek. Instead of using something to find a sick cow, let's use technology to get me a better NDF right at the tractor, so I know that the forage quality has changed and that I won't make a digestive upset rather than find a digestive upset on my cow. So I'm challenging the technicians and the people who use accelerometers and all of that. Let's go upstream in our technologies.
Good point. Very good point. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are pretty much at our close. Dr. Jones, Dr. O'Connor, I want to thank you for your stimulating presentations and the dialogue during the question and answer sessions. This is one of the most fundamental areas to the future of the dairy industry of anything. There is no dairy without a workforce of the future. So,
amen.
Conversation. So we look forward to continuing those conversations at the May 7th event and beyond. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks for
Thank you,
hosting,
Dr.
George.
Smith.
Bye-bye.
Bye.